Professor of Psychology and Tulalip Tribal member, Dr. StephanieFryberg, joins us on today's Hebulb Conversations to share an update on the Tulalip Academy of Excellence, an educational model connecting students with culture, nature, and a reimagined style of learning. Hi, and welcome to Hebulb Conversations. I'm Michelle Hernandez, and with us today is Dr. StephanieFryberg. Thank you for joining us, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me.
Let's get started with some background that led up to the vision for a different school model. Can you tell us about the research that shaped the school direction?
Yes. Well, I want to be, so first, in answering that question, I want to think just a bit about what the big picture is and what the community is asking, because the research we've done with the community is really important in driving where we're headed. And so it's important to put out that our goal is to maximize the opportunities for our children. And when I say that, I mean everything from we want our kids at Stanford, the Ivy Leagues, UW, the best liberal arts schools, Everett Community College, trade and vocational schools. Like, we want to maximize our children following their passions and getting there. And right now, our current school system fails them on that. And so the research began this past year with doing work in the community. We had more than 500 adults who participated and who gave their voice to what is important for our children. What do they want to see? How do they want teachers to behave? What do they want the strengths of our school to be? What are those adult skills we want kids to have? And, overwhelmingly, our community is saying, we want our kids to be happy. We want our kids to be successful. We want our kids to have the best education. We want our kids to know how to walk and talk in the Coast Salish way, to know how to be good Tulalip, Snohomish people, right? And so that has been at the center of every step that I have taken. And beyond that, as a psychologist, what has been important for me is looking at what we know about what brings well-being to context. So there are a number of people, including myself, who study how you can shape environments to create well-being. So the failure of Western education, and that's not a controversial statement. The US is among the poorest performing in education across the globe. And part of the reason that US education is failing is that it hasn't changed from its original inception. So when the US education system was developed, it was about assimilation. It was about creating factory workers. So this idea that you should sit for 7 hours, it's because as a factory worker, you have to sit for 7 hours. It's about being attentive to bells, right? So bells go off every 50 minutes. It tells you break now, start now, break now, start now. So this process is very much about learning to control bodies. This is the 21st century. We're not raising children to be factory workers, and yet we're still trying to control their bodies. We're still making them attentive to bells and whistles, and we're still saying you will sit for 7 hours a day. Look, our children aren't happy because who is happy being controlled like that? And so a lot of what we're looking at is there have been this movement towards models that are about letting kids be kids and letting them learn through play and letting them learn through engagement with the natural world. Our best teacher is the natural world. Our best teacher, science, math, storytelling, it's literally written into our natural environment. So we need our children to get outside. We need them to play, to grow things, to learn through walking through estuaries and along the beach and turning over rocks and seeing the crabs and the worms and understanding how those systems work. Going to the fish hatchery, going to a science museum, learning from our elders, the best stories. How did our fishing evolve? Right? When you understand that we were always scientists. We have always been connected. So the goal is really to think about how do we get away from this idea of controlling children. This is why we have high rates of ADHD. Guess what? You can't sit still, you must have a problem. No, they're children. And what we want to do is really, there's a direct relationship between how much time you spend outside and psychological well-being. So let's heal our children. Let's create spaces where they can be all of them. Co-Salish, I'm a child, let me be a child. Create an awe and excitement about learning. Like, these pieces are coming from our community. Those are the voices we're hearing. It's coming out of research as best practice that is not implemented in Western education. So you know what? Tulalip, I want it to be the model for the country.
So I hear you really talking about controlling bodies, and it reminds me of boarding school era.
Absolutely. I mean, the boarding school is all about assimilation. And I think when you take that old factory building assimilation model and you put it into our boarding schools, they literally beat our children into submission. And I think so much of the trauma we're trying to heal to create a learning space that is not about trauma, but one that's about community and well-being. So one of the most important pieces that came out of our research with the community was that our community wants zero tolerance for bullying. And I think that's really important for us to consider what that means. I mean, bullying is a big problem. And part of what it's going to mean to get there is we have to have a pathway for kids who do bully to actually learn how to be kind. And, you know, we know that for a lot of kids who bully, the bullying starts in the home. And it goes all the way back to the boarding school. I mean, it was this top-down, I am going to threaten you into submission. And, you know, when we feel desperate as parents, you know, it's not uncommon to go to that place where you're afraid of what your child is doing. And so you want to force them. You want to literally psychologically beat them into doing what you want, right? And so we bully. Bully is a form of psychological abuse. And so really we want to start over this year on working on getting out information out into the community about why that bullying exists, what the roots are, but also so we can see it. When I see someone who's explosive and they go from 0 to 100 in 2 seconds and you're going, whoa, 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 right? We need to be able to identify that as a trauma response, and we need to learn to have compassion for that person, but we also have to be able to guide them to a different place. And for children, it is going to be about working with families to get there, because we don't want to say, oh, Michelle, you're a bully, you can't come here, right? We want all of our children to have a place. But what we are going to say is, look, there's not a place for that behavior. Let's talk about what other behavior looks like. And then we're going to repeat that skill and really teach children what kindness looks like, you know, what it means. But I think there are many things about the design we are working towards that I also think will alleviate a lot of the bullying too. I mean, I think part of that bullying comes from a frustration that comes from teachers trying to control bodies and kids feeling like, I just want to move. And then it's like, you know, if you think about what it feels like to be oppressed and oppressed and oppressed and oppressed, that's how our kids feel in school every day. And so shifting that, where a kid then goes outside and is like, right? And so it is about, the context will help alleviate some of those issues, but we hear the community, and there will be zero tolerance for bullying, because it takes away from our learning environment. It takes away from the well-being of our community. And it very much will be a community space.
And what are some elements that would be designed differently in the new school system here?
Great question. So, I mean, number one, we will get kids outside, the whole age group. So we want to open up the fences, create space where kids can be literally in the forest, but it's still connected to the school. We want to create outdoor classroom spaces for K-5, really like spaces that you will look at it and think, oh, I want to play in that space. But guess what? It's also a math classroom. And oh, that's so fun. I could see why little kids would like that. It's also a science classroom. And that fishing boat over there with the Pacific octopus behind it, that's also storytelling and connection to our ancestors and our elders. And so you create these spaces, these outdoor spaces where kids can be outside with teachers and learning while they're moving things. And the thing is, there's a thing called a deeper cognitive load, like a deeper learning process. So when you sit and you do something on a piece of paper, that's one level. But when you move your body and do it, or when you teach it, or when you speak it, that is a deeper level of cognition, and it leads to long-term learning. So we want to engage that kind of cognition. We want our children to move and to be excited to come to school. And, who cares about 9 to 3? Let's open this as a community space. And so the elements, so you're talking outside, holistic, culture and language, more community engagement. And that part I know we'll talk about later, but I'm really excited about really building in well-being into literally every minute and every day of the classroom.
That's so exciting.
I literally could not be more excited.
That's great. That's something to really look forward to. Thank you for telling us about the goals for Tulalip Academy of Excellence. And we'll be right back with more Hebulb Conversations. Welcome to the Hebulb Cultural Center and Natural History Preserve, where you'll discover the journey of the Tulalip tribes. Our interactive displays introduce you to the legacy of the Tulalip people told in our words and voices. A journey for all to experience. Welcome back to Hebulb Conversations. We're so glad to have Dr. StephanieFryberg with us today. Welcome back.
Thank you.
What's in progress currently for the Tulalip Academy project?
So we have many things happening and at many different levels. So the phase 1 was really about grow your own teacher. I'm so excited. We have a partnership with the Indigenous teacher certification program in New Zealand. They were out here. We got to tour around, and I'm so excited. We have more than a dozen tribal members who have started that program this fall, and that's just amazing because it really gets us out of that Western way of thinking about controlling bodies and more about relationship, teaching through frameworks that we would connect to. So the next is really we're doing foundational work right now. So we're working on budgets, we're working on policies, practices, we're working to try to figure out architects. The biggest decision that needs to be made right now is, are we going to build a new school? Are we going to buy, for example, the Quilceda campus and then refurbish, redesign the buildings? Because the model is to be more outside, the building matters less, right? So both would work, but we need to make some decisions about that. And it's somewhat above my level, but, I think there's, we're sitting in an exciting place, but, what do we want to put on that campus? And so one of my big things has been hiring a person to do a capital campaign for our school to bring in money. There are things that our school should have. One, we need a pool. We have to go 20 to 30 minutes to get to a pool if you live out on the reservation. Our children should have access to a pool. It then would also become a community space for our elders. So, fortunately, there's a lot of foundations out there who are oh, brown kids who don't have a pool. I'm on that, right?
Get those kids in water.
Get those kids in the water. They all need to, and actually Native communities have the highest rates of kids who don't know how to swim.
Yep.
And we live on the water, so it's really important. We are working towards, on the capital campaign, what we're kind of terming an elder art center. And so really the idea of it is to have a art studio that is quite large, where you could have carving, basket weaving, like art, like painting, drawing, maybe glass blowing, but all of these different places. And then you basically create spaces where during the day, you know, a master weaver could say, you know, I really work in the morning. Great, we have space for you. Mm-hmm. And then kids can come in and work with them during the day. And we can make that space all day. It doesn't have to end at 3:00. It's a community space, but we create these spaces so children have the opportunity to really learn and engage with artists in the community. And so, you know, I think about it through an elder lens, only because I want to make sure that our elders know there are spaces for you. We want you at our school. We want you interacting with our children. And so we're going to try to build those spaces everywhere. We want to build the akin to like the intellectual house at UW, like a much smaller version, but where we can have drumming, music, have that, but also have it as a ceremonial, like graduation, you know, big event type space, but that it also can be a learning space. So not meant to be ceremonial, right, like in our longhouse down by the water, but it's meant to be a space where we're learning about those things. And so rather than thinking, okay, we're going to build this all on tribal hard dollars, we're trying to put it together, a capital campaign to really plan towards and build these items, and get philanthropists to contribute. So another thing is we've hired an expert. So our budget is a big deal, right? Like, how are we going to fund this? Right. It's really something that is at the heart of, you know, what it means for us to do this in the future. And so the board made the decision we will engage funding through Bureau of Indian Education and Tribal Compact, which our own Senator John McCoy was instrumental in creating this pathway for us. And it looks like we can bring in somewhere around 15 to 17, maybe a little bit more thousand per kid. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, we've gotten the numbers from all of our local in-state tribes who have their schools. And, you know, what they're telling us is that on top of what we get from the state, we're having to contribute 7 to 8K per student. And so, you know, some of the budget issues are, okay, well, where will we get the 7 to 8K? And so some of it can come through having a development office, a grant office that's connected to the school. So we're bringing in national grants, we're bringing in, you know, federal, local, philanthropic grants that can help to support that. I don't think we want to have a model where we're just always depending on tribal hard dollars. But I mean, there are going to be a lot of upfront costs to get this school up and running. But by trying to build those offices now, we get that ball rolling forward where we start to identify places to bring in funding. You know, that funding also, there's the title funding, impact aid. And so we've hired an expert to work on developing what is our working budget. And then we can think about other resources that we currently already have in the tribe that can come into this community space and help to support that space. And so to the extent that we get away from thinking about school as a 9 to 3, but rather thinking of this as a learning campus. You know, there may be adult classes in the evening, there may be, you know, activities, art, sports, all of that happening all day. We may be thinking about how are we going to feed everybody 3 times a day. Like we might really rethink this space so that it is a place where people want to come. It's a safe place. There's a lot of exciting things happening. And, you know, we have some kids who don't have stable homes. This is a great place for them all day. You know, they can be there. We'll have buses that are running. We don't have to be tied to any specific schedule. And so these are really where I'm spending most of my time, is trying to get to those places.
The logistics.
The logistics, yeah. And so I know people are really anxious to hear more about the schools, and certainly like curriculum and all of this, there's such a big process to this. And so, we're in this early phase, when we will apply for accreditation, and, we know we're trying to backdate from this. Like, for example, if we want to open a school in the fall of 2026, we have to have our applications in for funding by February 1 of 2026. But the way Tribal Compact works is you have to actually have all the negotiation done before that day. And so getting all the people in place to then start that negotiation with the state and, really maximize, like, we need experts for this because we want to get as much money coming in that door. We want to make sure that we don't fall into the same pitfalls that Marysville has. I mean, they didn't have the right people in the right place. And in the end, it has hurt the district tremendously. Right. We need to build a strong foundation to grow our school on.
It's just not something that can be rushed.
No, it cannot. And, these pieces are probably the least interesting. But what I keep every person we bring in, I'm like, here's the community report. You need to keep in mind, this is what is most important. These voices have to carry all the way through. This is our living document. And there will be another round of community input that will come as we get curriculums up and, getting people to go through them and give their input. Once we get policies, a draft that will fit, like there isn't a cookie cutter policies and procedures that's going to work for us, because we want the cultural piece, we want the relationship, we want children outside. So we have to rethink safety. We have to rethink, what is a teacher like? What do we want a teacher to do? Yeah. Do we even want to call them a teacher? Right. Do we want principals? Do we want building leaders? Like, are we going to use that British designated school titles, or are we going to come up with our own? Yeah. And so I think all of these are decisions we want to get community input on. We have language. We want language, period, everywhere. Language immersion. So how do we get there? We need every one of those teachers to also be Lashute certified, right? That's a big ask. And so we have to value it. So are we going to pay a teacher who's Lashute certified more than someone who's not? Absolutely. Right. Like, we have to.
Yeah, why wouldn't we?
Yeah. I mean, if we don't value who we are, then our children will know that.
Yeah. So what are our next steps?
Yeah, so, right now we need to get this structural piece worked out. We do need to make a decision, and I know it's something the board is really, wrapping their heads around, where, which decision to make. That's really important. And then, frankly, if we are going to refurbish or we are going to build, those are going to determine how soon we can open our school. Yep. And so, at that point, the next big thing is we got to get architects. How are we going to redesign? If we buy a campus, then, what do we don't want it to look like a sterile institution. Sure. So how are we going to do that? Yeah. And then who are we going to hire to build these outdoor classrooms? All of these decisions, that's where we sit. Yeah. And so I spend most days in meetings with experts. Like, we need the right people in place to make sure that we're getting the foundation set correctly, right? Like, we don't all we would never build a casino and say, oh, we'll just throw down some.
We'll figure it out later.
Yeah. We'll just, don't worry. Well, it might not be 90 degrees, but it's close enough, right? Sure. We're not going to do that. Like, we have to have the foundation. It needs to be solid, rock solid.
Absolutely.
It needs to be perfectly aligned. We have to get, as people would say, our ducks in a row, and we need to be real clear about them.
Yeah. What an exciting project to work on.
I love it. I'm so excited. I get up every day.
Just
4:30, and I'm like, let's go.
It's a terrible time to wake up.
No, it's not. I see our differences right now.
So where can people hear more about this project?
Yeah, so I know there's a lot of interest out there. And let me just say, I'm not a Facebook poster, so that part doesn't work for me. But we are working to get out a monthly article now. And so I think this month we're going to focus on the growth of our Grow Your Own Teacher program and our visitors who came and really talk about that. Last month, we focused more on just sort of an update, but each month we're going to keep getting the information out there to keep the community informed. I am Tulalip, the report is posted there, but we just want to keep giving people information as we go. Of course, there'll be some months where it's going to seem slow because we're just grinding through the weeds, but we'll just report that. So I think that's really the best we can do right now.
I think
and
that's
by
perfect.
we, it's really me. So I guess we should.
It's the best I can do.
Me and Tina. So at some point we have to also hire a staff and get more people working on this project.
Yeah. For us, what will success look like in our school?
So we did ask the community that question, and so first and foremost, happy children. Who are excited to go to school. But more importantly, they will be children who are excited to learn, who will have a sense of awe for learning, which you can't underestimate what a huge thing that will be for our kids. But in the end, success will be adults who know who they are, who have passion, who have a sense of where they want to go in the world, that they will be successful adults who are contributing to our community, contributing to society, whether that's our future doctor, lawyer, philanthropist, teacher, tribal government leader. We have all of that is possible, but when we think about people who come through school and learn to be excited about learning, you can do any job. So many jobs are about having the resources and the know-how to find out what you need.
And the confidence.
Yeah, and the confidence and the excitement to take on new challenges. And so I think at the end of the day, that really will be the marker that we have done well, is that our kids are happy, confident, excited to take on new challenges, heading off to the best colleges, heading off to different vocational skills and being great at them, because we haven't killed the passion in them. Instead, we've seen the fire and we've lifted it and we've said go. And we've enabled them to be who they're supposed to be.
I love that. Well, I'm really excited to see it.
Me too. I can't wait.
Yeah.
I wish we could open the door in September. Because I think really half-baked what we want to do is way better than what's currently happening. But we really want to set the foundation and make it great. And when we open it, have all the plans, like things are set and we're good to go.
It's going to be the Tulalip Academy of Excellence.
Well, and at some point that is our placeholder title. But at some point, I want to think about what is the Lashootsied version of that honors our history, our former leaders, and I think that will be a great community input piece. And I definitely have some ideas in mind, but we used that term in part because we needed to name it something. But there will be an opportunity in the future to really think about that title and what's going to represent our people in the best way.
It's beautiful.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching He Bulb Conversations. I'm Michelle Hernandez. Until next time.